Jordan Anderson's experience is echoed by another young woman on the other side of the world in Los Angeles. Laura de Crescenzo is one of a small group of former Scientologists who are taking the church to court in America for alleged violations of workplace legislation. Like Jordan Anderson, Laura says she had to work excessive hours and was once asked to scrub out a dumpster.
Someone came up to me and said, okay, you need to come downstairs with me. So we went downstairs and she handed me a toothbrush and said, you need to clean this dumpster with a toothbrush. And I said, no. I said, you got to be kidding me. No, I'm not going to do that.
Laura de Crescenzo has backed her allegations with sworn statements, and other former Scientologists have as well. The church accuses the American litigants of lacking credibility and having ulterior motives. You're taking the church to court. Why are you doing that?
My lawsuit covers human trafficking, labor law violations, and forced abortions. And there's many reasons. I mean, obviously, I came to realize that if no one ever has the strength to stand up and say the truth of what went on, then it will only continue and get worse.
My court case in the United States is basically alleging that they should be paying minimum wage. That's pretty much it. That there's human trafficking going on, which is basically holding people to work for a wage that's less than what they should be being paid, and not allowing them to just leave if they want to leave.
One issue in the courts will be the fact that the church doesn't pay its staff in the Seaorg a minimum wage. It argues that members of the Seaorg are not employees, but volunteers who don't expect to be paid.
We do so out of our own religious conviction and our desire to work for and be part of and contribute to our religion and its activities. And as such, we don't expect a wage, and we don't do it for a wage.
However, Mark Headley says he signed a contract of employment similar to this one when he joined the Seaorg and was promised a minimum wage.
15 years later, I was paid an average of 38 cents an hour for working over 100 hours a week, every single week of every year for 15 years. In 15 years, I made a total of $29,000 for 100 hours a week, every week.
When Mark and Claire met, they were posted to one of the church's most secure Seaorg facilities at Hemet, 2 hours' drive outside Los Angeles. The facility is surrounded by high fences topped with razor wire. What did the church tell you about people who wanted to leave?
That people in the Sea organization have foregone the right to leave, and that was reiterated on many different instances. I mean, honestly, I've reflected since leaving, and the only thing that even comes close for me in terms of living conditions and everything else is prison. Just is.
Claire Headley joined the Seaorg age 16 and worked for the Religious Technology Center, earning as little as $23 a week. How hard was it doing that job?
Words don't describe it. I mean, there was 2 to 3 year periods where if I slept at all, it was in an office chair or on a floor or 2 hours in a bed. I very, very rarely saw Mark.
Claire Headley says excessive hours and little pay weren't the only form of abuse she and other women were subjected to. She says she was coerced by senior staff into having 2 abortions. The church denies these allegations.
I will always have that emotional scar and wounds. It's a horrifying form of abuse that goes on very prevalently in the Sea organization.
Claire Headley says the first abortion took place when she was 19 years old. She and Mark had married 2 years earlier.
I had not been paid in months, and I'd used birth control before, but I could not afford it. They sat down with me and prepared me for essentially saying, good, we're going to take you to the Planned Parenthood. They're going to ask you, do you want an abortion? You are to say yes. And I was going to be driven there by a staff member who would be waiting for me outside in the waiting room. So there was absolutely no option. I mean, I was absolutely cornered. This was my worst nightmare come true, absolutely.
Claire Headley says her second abortion took place in Clearwater, Florida. Again, she says she had no money for contraception. She asked to speak to her husband, Mark, who was still at the Hemet base outside Los Angeles.
That was not authorized. Essentially, I was forced to go through with this. I wasn't able to tell Mark anything of this until the next time I saw him physically, which was 8 months later.
That's when I found out. I was not consulted. I was not told. It was kept quiet. Nothing.
What is the Seaorg policy on having children?
Seaorg members do not have children. If someone is a member of the Sea organization and they wish to have a child, they would need to do so outside of the Seaorg, at which point, when the child is of age, those individuals could come back, to the Sea organization if they so chose. And that's been policy for almost 20 years now.
Why does the church ask pregnant women in Seaorg to have abortions if they wish to stay in the Seaorg?
Absolutely, that is absolutely not true, and I categorically deny that allegation. The Church of Scientology would, under no circumstances, and it certainly has no reflection in church policy, tell a woman what to do with her body, tell a woman what to do with regards to her child, her pregnancy, her family, or any such thing.
Right.
This, though, is exactly what many women allege. Claire Headley says she knows of about 40 other women in the Seaorg who say they've been pressured into having abortions.
Good boy.
Laura DeCrescenzo joined the Seaorg in Los Angeles aged 12 and says she was coerced into having an abortion 5 years later by a senior officer.
She started explaining to me that at this stage, the baby, as they refer to it, there was no Satan there, meaning there was no spirit occupying the body. She was saying, look at how detrimental it would be to the organization if you were to leave. Your post or your job is very important here. We don't have anybody else to put in that job right now. Just the continual pounding, I ended up conceding and doing the abortion.
You have 2 beautiful little boys.
I do.
Do you ever look at them and think what might have been?
Of course.
In Australia, when Liz Anderson was in the Seaorg and thought she might be pregnant, she too told a senior officer.
She said, well, you just can't be pregnant. Because at that stage, the new policy had come in that you can't have children in the Seaorg. I was not pregnant, it turned out, but my decision would have been to keep the child.
But what did she advise you to do?
I'd have to have an abortion.
If there was a Seaorg staffer or a number of staffers who had advised women to have abortions, that's something you would utterly condemn.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's another disturbing aspect to life in the Seaorg. When members of the organization transgress, they risk being sent to the RPF, the Rehabilitation Project Force.